Yeah, so you talk about overcoming fear, and you talk about fear being this kind of driving force in I think a lot of people's lives as a thing that holds them back. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about fear in relationships and how that leads to intimacy. And is that something that's always been there, or is this something that's continued to kind of grow with the way modern culture has changed?
Yeah, I think we're obviously we're motivated and driven by various aspects of self, biological, psychological, spiritual, emotional, etc. Emotional being somewhat well, not somewhat, but being biochemical, electrical, and that. We're either pulled towards something where we're inspired, and when we are inspired, there's less space for contraction. There's less space for psychological and emotional fear. There's less space for low self-worth, insecurity, feelings of inadequacy. There's less of a sympathetic nervous system response. There's less hormonal fluctuations of adrenaline and cortisol when we're inspired and pulled towards something. And when we push ourselves towards something, when we're pushed towards something, it's more forceful. There's more of a contracted state. We're more in a sympathetic nervous system response. There's fear that accompanies that, right? And so there's constantly this interchange between psychology and biology that's going on in our bodies, in our beings, right? So we're either, moved by love and we carry a spaciousness within ourselves, or we're moved by fear. So we need to do something in order not to receive the negative consequence. So if I don't go to work, I'm not going to get money, and therefore I won't eat or have the things that I want or keep up with the Joneses or get the car that I like or whatever it may be, right? Even if I don't like my job, I'm going to work, I'm going to do the things, I'm going to give my time, my resources, my energy. I'm going to feel all the feelings of frustrating because I'm driven by fear of not having. I'm driven by fear of lack, right? As an example.
Yeah, not being able to provide for your family. Any other stories you've decided to?
Of course. Yeah.
Now, you see being pushed toward, the thing. Now, are you considering that being an internal or an external push?
Can be both.
Okay. And so
can be both.
I know for me, like the internal push rarely, or I guess at this point for me, is rarely fear driven. And it's like that push toward the unknown. I like, but that's definitely taken a long time to develop.
Well, I was going to go somewhere with that. So let's go into the original question around fear and intimacy and fear in relationships and so forth. So you say the stage of life where you're at now, the season you're in, and what you've moved through, very rarely are you driven, motivated, moved by fear, correct? That's correct, right? You haven't, yeah. So with that said, what has transpired in your life for you to get to that point? Why do you think you're at that point? In the most simplest form or language you could use.
I overcame a really, really dark period. Got injured as an athlete and then had a bunch of knee surgeries and lost a bit of an identity there of who I was, what I could do, those type of things, confidence in my body. And then, which turned into struggle in a relationship and a divorce and those type of things, and to now being on the backside of it after doing a lot of self-awareness work.
There it is. That's it. So the difference between driven by fear or being driven or moved by love or an expansive place is that right there, doing the internal work. Now we have to unpack that. Mm-hmm. We have an opportunity to unpack what does doing the internal work mean, right? And we can do that now. We can. Yes. Yeah, we can begin to unpack what that means. But essentially, in short, it's doing the internal work. It's being aware of yourself. It's being aware of your circle. Awareness is only one part of it. You're obviously taking actions, activating internal ways of being within yourself, new practices, habits, inner child work, self-love work, somatic work, trauma release work. Utilizing somatic tools to move the tension, the trauma, the pain, the fear out of your body, because generally the inhibitions, the insecurities, the pains, the arguments, the conflicts that we experience in our adult lives, in our adult relationships are really reflections of our childhood experiences, what we experienced growing up during our formative years, our developmental years of understanding self, understanding the world, understanding relationship, how we give and receive love, how we relate to intimacy. Is it safe? Is it unsafe? Are people safe? Is love safe? Our sexuality, all of that is formed during our developmental stages of being, from the ages of really in the womb to 12 years old, 15, 18 years old even. And we develop these ways of being, these coping strategies to deal with difficulty and fear and pain. We develop these coping strategies to deal with loss and abandonment and rejection. And what are our stories? What are our experiences? Were we violently abused by our father, by our mother? Were we sexually abused by people that we trust and love? That impacts and affects how we then see the world and see others, how we enter into relationship. We want to be in relationship because we all crave to be understood and seen and loved and all those things at some level, right? We all want that attention. We all want that respect and reverence. And there's a part of us that's fucking really scared to even go there. So now we're driven by fear. All the things that we do, the nuances of our behavior, whether it's the people pleasing, whether it's the lying, whether it's the avoidance of the hard conversation, whether it's the trying to always gain the upper hand in relationship, whether it's being loud and big and obnoxious to let that person know that you're in control because you fear being out of control. All the ways you show up in relationship are effects and symptoms of what you experienced growing up. And how to remedy that, or how to get into greater mastery of yourself and be more active in your conscious mind to choose what you want to do and who you want to be, is to quote unquote do your inner work. Go on a vision quest, work with a shaman, work with a psychologist, understand your childhood traumas, explore these aspects of self, look at the patterns in your life. Spend time in nature, move and exercise your body, have a healthy constitution. Look at where you're avoiding in your life, where you're overworking, over drinking, overeating, taking too many drugs, numbing out in front of the TV, avoiding the thing that you know that you need to do, not really living a full life and living in regret and waking up every morning and doing, which basically says, I fucking hate my life.
Why do you think so many people can't find a direction for that energy and are just caught?
Because it's too intense to deal with. Okay. Because what happens is when the body experiences, a great question, and it's a simple answer, but a very difficult one to go into. Because I would premise that, I would posit that you, in your own journey that you went through, that you've gone through, that you continue to go through, had to face some demons, correct?
Sure. Yeah. There's no doubt about it.
You had to face some hard times. I would also say one of many reasons, I'm sure, why you became an athlete was to protect yourself, was to prove something, maybe to your father, maybe to someone else, maybe to the world, maybe to yourself. But the discipline and the hardness that you learned in being an athlete actually prepared you indirectly for the journey of facing your demons and the shadow walking that you did, the hero's journey that you went on. Because you had an example, it's parallel. It's like, you work in the oil and gas industry and then you move into the medical industry, let's just say. There's parallels there, right? Like the skill sets that you learned there in management in oil and gas or whatever, there's a parallel and a crossover in other industries as well. It's the same. Like you deal with pain in one area of life, you can learn to deal with pain in another area of life. And so most people just, they don't know how to look at their stuff because they're such in a pattern of years of compounding, of running away from themselves. And the reason why they've done that is because it's too difficult to look at. It's too painful. When we're young and we experience cycles of abuse or patterns of insecurity or an identity of low self-worth or whatever, our bodies are very, very good at saying, I don't want to experience that, so I'm going to compensate. I'll compensate with high grades. I'll compensate with a high sex drive. I'll compensate, sexual promiscuity. I'll compensate with impressing my friends and being violent or being the big man on campus or being the kid that takes all the risks, or I'll compensate with hiding in the world. That becomes a primary pattern. Hiding in your room, not playing with the kids, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to be bullied. Now you hide in other areas of your life, including hiding from yourself. It becomes a pattern.